Hello? Working now? Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event here today, a collaboration event between Climate and the youth co-hosts of the Food Systems Pavilion. So if you don't know the youth co-hosts, I suggest you go network with them outside, just outside this event, because there's some fabulous young people here today. So today we've got a really exciting conversation with you with some incredible speakers all talking about nurturing equitable food systems through digital innovation for farmers and young people. So I'll be chairing this conversation here with you today. My name is Sophie. I am the Global Youth Campaigns Coordinator at the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, where I work on a global movement called Act for Food, where we aim to transform food systems through youth-led campaigns across the globe. So, as you're all probably aware, in our rapidly evolving world, digital innovation plays a pivotal role in shaping equitable food systems. So what can we aim to do in this hour is bridge the gap between farmers and young people by exploring how innovations in technology can both empower young farmers and young people, but also create a more equitable landscape across agriculture. And with that, I'm sure you're here to listen to the speakers, not me. So our first speaker is the really incredible Linny Wallenberg, a future path maker with ClimEat, a future and project lead climate action with the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT. And Linny will discuss digital innovations for scaling climate action and sustainability. The floor is yours, Linny.
Thank you, Sophie. It's my great pleasure to be here. Next slide, please. I guess I do the slides. Let's see. All right. So while we all know that digital resources offer this enormous capacity to help scale up agricultural practices through either technical advisories or by performance benchmarking, the problem is that a lot of the digital content has not been specific to farmers' local contexts. So we have these great digital tools, especially the ones that reach lots and lots of farmers, but they're not able to be used in specific situations necessarily because they don't provide the environmental information or the socioeconomic information that farmers need to make the solutions on their property work. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we can use co-creation as a way to better enable digital tools to address local contexts. And what do I mean by co-creation? Co-creation in this presentation refers to localizing solutions. So as I said, making it relevant to your place. It also involves supporting information flows among extension agents, farmers, and scientists. And lastly, collaborative solution making. So let's look at what happens. I'm going to present to you the second year results of a 3-year project that is called Agroecological Transitions, Socially Inclusive Digital Tools. And this is a project of the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT, funded by the EU and IFAD. And our goal is to improve the overall inclusiveness of digital tools in the digital ecosystem, scaling up practices for climate change and agroecology, and then testing this co-creation model. And we've chosen two areas, one in Brazil and one in Vietnam. Brazil for livestock and Vietnam for rice, because these are hot spots for emissions, and we wanted to see to what extent we could also reduce the emissions from these systems. So beef supply chain and working on e-extension in Brazil, and in the rice supply chain, really trying to understand what is the performance according to national policies that are trying to improve the efficiency of fertilizers and pesticides. So the first thing that I want to mention is that we did a survey of all the digital tools that were available related to agroecology and climate change, and we found that of the 230 that we identified that were online and available, only 39 of them addressed climate change, and for mitigation, most of these were greenhouse gas calculators. And for both adaptation and mitigation, we found that very few tools addressed any kind of practices. So even for digital tools, where practices even for digital tools, even for the few that address climate change, we have very few that are addressing practices, and very few of those that are enabling farmers to design solutions specific to their needs. So Enter Solidariedade in Pará State in Brazil, who work with about 1,000 livestock farmers, who have an existing digital extension tool called Extension Solution that wasn't working. And so they wanted to find out how can they make this work better for their farmers. So we had a series of workshops, and they found three things. First, that young farmers are using digital platforms, specifically, especially WhatsApp as a communication channel, and YouTube, TikTok, and Kwai as a content channel. But they were having difficulty finding good quality content. The second thing is that they really want to have information from their peers and from the places where they're working, not from 3 countries on the other side of the globe. And lastly, that young farmers and women wanted to provide content. So they designed an innovation based on their existing tool that was more farmer-facing. And there are 4 elements to this. First, the farmer doesn't have to download anything. They just get a link, and they immediately have access to the tool. Second, the tool provides them a guided action plan and gives them direct access to an extension agent. Third, the farmer can access priority practices and gets individual guidance. But most importantly, the farmers themselves can share content, and they can like content, and it mimics what people already are doing on social media. And they're also youth ambassadors who then talk as a real human being can talk to farmers about what the content is. So what are the conclusions? First of all, when we talk about socially inclusive digital tools, it's not just about providing broadband access or even user-designed tools. It's also thinking about the content of the tools and ensuring that the practices that we're promoting are not just these top-down, this is what you need to do for mitigation or adaptation, but the practices that farmers can actually use. And so the 5 lessons that we learned from Brazil were, first, learn what farmers are already using and what they want. Second, develop the farmer side of the technology, especially building on these social media practices that farmers are already using. Third, curate the content so that it's locally relevant. Fourth, don't forget about the human intermediaries. We can't just go digital. We must have the human trusted human intermediaries. And finally, support the community leadership, especially among the youth who are interested in promoting these systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linny, and I love that you reminded us to not forget the humans, because our digital landscape can grow and continue to grow, but if we don't have a human-centered design approach and really incorporating young farmers into that design approach, what use is the technology without access? And that brings us really well onto Anna Carolina Zimmerman, a farmer and policy and advocacy participant with the Gymnasium participant, yeah, at the World Farmers Organization. Anna will discuss the future of farming. Anna, the floor is yours.
Good day, everyone. We see each other. So, we're talking about the future of farming. So, let's see. For you, is it okay? Can you hear me? Okay, nice. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm a Brazilian farmer in the heart of Brazil. I'm based in Brasilia, but this is in Goiás state. Brasilia is the capital, not Rio, not São Paulo, just to let you know. And since 2.5 years ago, I had a challenge, and we bought the farm that was our grandparents, and we had to transform Cerrado with pasture that was degraded into that scene. So in 2.5 years, that's a long run. So I was talking to Lini before, we're not doing tremendous innovative things, but we're doing simple steps in order to transform that. So the first thing, we're doing soil analysis. Instead of seeing pasture as only a resource, we're seeing as a crop. How can we better form that crop? So we understand a little bit on how we can do the soil. So we do planning on the pasture species, and also we are constructing infrastructure in terms of the fences. We also do soil management, and we do the pasture management with rotational grazing when is allowed, because we also have 6 months without any rain, so that's really hard. And so we can do a little bit in the rain season, and some of that we can do in the dry season, different strategies. We're also using biotechnology. So as you can see, this is in the same day in different areas. So I'm looking to a corridor. This one is one way. The other one is the same pasture. But that one, we used bacteria from a cactus called Mondacaru. And the name of the bacteria is Ariabatai. So what it does is that it creates resistance to the dry season. So it's the same pasture, it's the same day, except that one has a bacteria. So that's something we're doing differently. We also do have organic fertilizers we're using from some of our partners. Some of them we can also use in our farms, but that's the way we're also doing circular economy. Other practices we're doing not only in that farm, so that farm is about beef cattle, but I also wanted to bring a little bit of context of grains, which is another part of our business. We have 100% no-till. We've been doing that for since 2000. We have water containment systems in creating, digging a little bit holes along the road so the water can be contained, so it's not going to have any problems in terms of erosion. In Brazil, we have one of the best cases about reverse logistic. So we have depositing the empty packaging. 94% of the pesticides packaging in Brazil, they're going to be recycled. So that's the biggest case we have. Sometimes people relate agriculture with fire in general, but in fact, it's the other way around. We have firefighting training, and we are constantly equipped for helping to stop those sort of things at the farm. We are very connected to our neighbors as well. So in case something happens, we can help each other because the soil is that we have as best. In Brazil, we also have the legal reserve. So by law, depending on the biome we have to have minimum percentage in that biome. So in Cerrado, it's 20%. So of our land, by law, at least 20% has to be preserved, and we don't have any money from that. We also, by law, need to have permanent preservation areas. So whenever there's rivers or body of water, we also have to have legally to oblige that in Brazil. We are all geoforested and registered at INCRA, which is an institute for regulating everything like that. And we are also doing the preservation of water springs and restoring some bodies of water that were not restored. About the cattle again, we're doing intensive pasture termination, which means that it's a semi-confinement regime. So whenever we are in the dry season, because we cannot provide them with lots of pasture anymore, we're providing them with grains, but they can also graze. So it's a way they can be slaughtered faster, so they are also reducing the cycle in terms of methane emissions. This is the area, it's very different from how it was before. We're doing the rotational grazing, and it's a way to be a little bit more intensive, but also restoring the environment because we're caring of how much pasture we have. And we also have the irrigation systems in the crop farms that allows us to store the water from the rain. So the river keeps going, and the irrigation system is a way that we can be more resilient through the crisis that we're having. So lots of these are different practices we're doing. They're very simple, they're not super disruptive, but they're actually happening. And I really connect with what Lini was saying, that we need to be context specific. You understand what farmers need. So in different farms, we do different approaches. In that one, for example, the pivots can be turned on with cell phones, and you have high-tech end. In this farm, for example, it's a very different context. I was telling my friends the other day, sometimes we have problems in connecting the Bluetooth with the weight and to the stick. So we have different problems I need to address in different ways, but we're doing it either way. So that's it. I hope we stay connected.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was really great to see that the connection between new and old technology and the non-disruptive, simple forms of technology to really get to where we need to be. I think the future of farming is in really, really good hands with you. Our next guest speaker is Sebastian Pedraza from YPARD. He is going to give us a perspective of the lack of innovation and digital inclusivity in the youth space. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian. I am the chair of the steering committee of YPARD. And as you know, And as our guest told us, I'm going to speak about empowering youth to building sustainable food system through innovation in Latin America and the Caribbean. So for those that do know, YPAR is a global network of youth professionals that are empowering youth to transform food systems. And what we want to do is to enable, empower youth, to make their voice heard in these spaces when we need to be. And we are, a global network. We are in Africa, Asia, Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Europe, and North America, and Canada. And we have around 33,000 members in 65 countries. And I'm going to talk to you about quickly some of our projects that we have in Latin America that are really connected with innovation. The first of those is the Rural School, the Rural Youth School that is hosted by our chapter in YPAR, Peru. There are some key practices that they have. One is the online leadership that they have, also connecting research centers, also universities, and different actors on local levels to have this training directly with the young leaders that they have there in Peru. The second thing is that they co-design initiatives between youth, communities, and research centers to start to apply that using the innovation that is being, for example, led by a research center as the CIAT, for example, that our colleague mentioned, and also they connect directly with online mentoring that they have with really high-level professionals. A second perfect example is YPAR Empodera, that is a power program that we have with organizations in LAC. Some of the practices that we want to implement in this project was the intense and hybrid process to empower and transfer these management skills as digital tools for organization and initiatives. Because these organizations have these skills, so what we wanted to prepare, to the real world. The second one is design and implementation of innovation plans with high-level mentors. So they need to apply all this knowledge and these practices that they just got into these sessions. So they start to design plans and they start to implement those plans to improve the work of the organizations. And the third one is the process of replication of the organization through in advocacy community. So they just find these communities and they start to look for leaders that they can just start to replicate the knowledge that they got through the different sessions, the training session and with the tutoring with the experts. Another quick example is the training of June, a woman in nutrition sensitivity advisory services in Colombia. So what we did is that they passed for a training of the implementation of agricultural production systems. They train also in digital rural advisory services because, as one of our colleagues says, rural youth are more connected with this kind of apps and this kind of medias. So we use that power and this let's say sensibility that the youth has to connect it directly with and learn how they use this a different tool of advisory services, digital advisory services, to start to replicate and teach to their to their parents and also their grandparents. And the other one is digital literacy for producers. As you know, they are not related, connect with IT. So what they do is through different workshops, the young leaders just teach them how to use the different media. They can access to all this online training that our partners are leading. So these are three perfect examples of how we can use IT to connect young leaders to start to empower them to be part of the transformation of food systems and also connect them and start to empower also farmers, because we consider we need to work with both, the traditional knowledge and also the power of the science and the innovation that we have now through the research centers and also through the different stakeholders of the communities. And yeah, this was super short, and we invite you just to join to the transformation and construction of the sustainable food system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. And we do have short presentations, but we're going to have a nice long discussion afterwards. So don't worry, you'll hear from all our speakers a bit more. So thank you so much, Sebastian. I think you really reiterated that we don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to digital technologies. It's mostly about capacity building, training, access, and youth leadership programs to ensure that young people have a route into that digital technology. Our next guest is going to talk a little bit about disruptive ways. I think when we talk about technology, it's a lot about not reinventing the wheel, non-disruptive, but when we look at policy, sometimes we need to think a little bit disruptively to change the system. So Alexis Balman is a climate and youth delegate of Switzerland, and you're going to talk all things disruptive, innovative policies for farmers and young people. Welcome.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. So with my presentation, let's take a step back and look at the policy level, first on food and then on general. So just as a disclaimer, I'm here as a food enthusiast, not an expert, and an advocate for sure, because I'm the climate youth delegate of Switzerland. And I will try to present you two main things that we can think about to have more innovative policies in terms of youth in the food system. So basically, the first thing, I know it's a big graph. I just wanted to highlight how systemic our thinking should be, and it's quite of highlighting the aim of this pavilion, right? Food system pavilion. It goes exactly in the same direction with youth policies. It has to be systemic. And I look at one specific paper from FAO, which was about empowering young agri-entrepreneurs to invest in agriculture and food system. And I'm more than happy to share with you the resources afterward. I want to focus on the very last one, which we actually don't really see that much here, which is engage youth in policy making and processes. So what I found interesting is that in this report, there was one sentence that said there are many programs, but never any programs and initiative by and with the youth. So here the thing is that we have to consider to give the decision-making power and also the ability of youth to create their own way of doing. So that's the key message here for innovative youth policies. And the focus on the fifth recommendation, as we can see, how can we implement this? Basically, there are 4 ways. We can engage with youth organizations and other relevant stakeholders in policy-making processes. We can also give particular attention to ensure that the voice of possibly marginal groups are being integrated. That's another thing that we should directly involve in setting performance criteria and be engaged in the impact of monitoring. So that's what I said. Youth have to be implemented not at only one step or at the finance step, but from scratch and at every level of youth policy development. And finally, where youth organizations lack capacity to do so or exist, as a multitude of small organizations, we could consider also to have support by third party, such as NGOs that are dedicated to help youth. So I also wanted to give you a more concrete example of this because I'm part of the Youth Advisory Board of OECD. And actually the OECD, so we're not on the food level here anymore, but more on the general. And I think it do make sense because OECD has come up with recommendation for youth integration in policies. And I'm also more than happy to give you some of the documents. And here, one of the main message is that we have to integrate, again, them at every level and make them aware that there's actually opportunities to implement new policies that can help them, be it on the farmer level or in other levels that are connected with other type of sustainability challenges. So this is the picture we took at the Berlin event with OECD when we gathered about 100 youth to talk about those things, how to raise awareness among youth. And this is showing a very bottom-up approach of youth policy implementation. And this is what I do think we should aim for. I have also put some advices from my advocacy experiences, how to avoid tokenisms, how to be sure that youth can actually have a meaningful implementation. We should adapt and adopt some policies and structure that help them to feel comfortable. So we have to step up the game of the policy level in the sense of going into something that make youth feel comfortable, make young farmers feel comfortable. So it's not only about the content, but also the structure. And I think I'm going to finish with a conclusion from one of the deputy assistants of the International Affair and Food Security at the Federal Office of Agriculture of Switzerland, which says youth is the future of food security. The role of youth as agent for the transformation of agriculture and food system needs to gain even greater global attention to drive positive change right across the 2030 agenda. So my message, it has to be intersectoral, it has to be systemic, and you should be integrated from the bottom to the top. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alexis. I think it's what we keep hearing is nothing about youth without youth. And young people need to be the co-creators, not just the beneficiaries of policies. So to see firsthand how we're beginning to do that, I think is really great. I'm going to ask all our speakers to come back onto our lovely leveled stage to have a little roundtable discussion. Okay, and we're back. Huge thank you to the tech team. I know it's it's a struggle in a small room. You all look like an incredible band now, so really happy to have you. So we have one question for all of you, and then I'm going to invite you to ask questions to each other, because I think this is such an interesting space and you all bring really interesting angles. And then I'm going to get the audience ready, because we're going to throw it back to the audience, because I know we don't just have incredible people here, but we also share some incredible voices in the audience as well. So my question to the panel, where is it? How can the digital ecosystem be strengthened to ensure what you're doing grows and what you're doing reaches more people beyond the communities that you're working with? I might hand it to Linny first.
The digital ecosystem, it doesn't exist in a lot of places where the farmers that I care about are working. And so we're really often starting from scratch, which means cell phones. And I think strengthening the access to information on cell phones, but also educating organizations about how farmers can use that information well would already be a huge first step. We think about building out the ecosystem, you'd want to think about other kinds of devices, other kinds of information, other kinds of support organizations. So it's a long-term prospect. It's a generational project. Yeah. Thank you.
And I'm going to ask you, because you work with a lot of communities on the ground, you're using simple technologies. How do you ensure that the farmers that you work with have access to those simple, what we deem simple technologies?
It's funny because I see different ecosystems working differently. So within the same stage, we have different realities of what's happening. So for example, in the crop side, the farmers are very connected and they share the technology and they have access to, so they build together the roads that the governments did and they actually put money on the roads and they're doing the infrastructure all together. And on the livestock sector where I'm at, it's a very different environment, it's not very well developed. And you can see the difference in the ecosystem as well. So the neighbors are not united. So in Brazil, we have the National Confederation of Livestock and Agriculture. And they also have Senar, which is for rural process for us. And sometimes I mean bringing people to have a free course in the property, have a conversation. Food communities have. I think it starts with of the community engaged and that we can look and do something for the infrastructure. So my last example, a road, and then with the producers in that region are advocating for having this better road, but that was only possible because producers got together. I would say that's the same thing.
I need to come into view. Alexis, I'm going to put you on the spot. To strengthen our digital about how digital ecosystems are changing and ever growing, how do you think that young policy and government do so?
Yeah, we have to have an approach that is systemic and consider other actors that might be related to policies in the first place, but that actually are acting as enablers. Consumers, such as maybe retail NGOs, as I mentioned before. We have to have a systemic perspective because then whole new system that we want to build. And I think this systemic perspective is still missing right now. And also the other thing to change the view of youth integration point where now debate, it's in the debate as well, but we still have to be integrated from scratch, and we shouldn't think about the way the future and think about the needs
youth populations to being integrated better into policy and the digital landscape.
I think that young people would notice that they cannot make hear their voice by themselves. They need someone. They need you to be part of something bigger, you know, as an organization. So I think they realize that they need to just do something together. I think in Latin America in general, I think when we grow up in our education, always the people and our system teach us to compete with each other. When you find other organization or other kind of enterprise, let's say, is to compete, is to win. However, I think what we are promoting is to create and to collaborate together, you know, because our food system is so big, there is a lot of problems, and everyone has, you know, as I heard today in a session, a piece of the response, of the answer. So what we're trying to do is involve all the sectors, because to create a real and sustainable chain in the food system, you need all the actors, as our partner says. So for example, just 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to organize a Latin American conference there in Colombia, by the way, in the CIAT. And we just bring together all the voices from different organizations in Latin America and also the partners. And we had the opportunity to create a coalition, a Latin American coalition, with all the stakeholders in the region, to put there together and to start to create a document from demand, priorities, but also actions to create, because with all we are working together, I think we can just create a bigger impact, and also we can make hear our voices with the governments and also private sectors, and also, as I told, and I think this is a philosophy in WIPR, for create a real rural development, we need that multi-sectoral efforts, and we need to everyone just put something to be, you know, part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Sebastian.